Hello and welcome to This is Therapy 20 Minutes in the Mind of a Nigerian. I am so glad you're here. And remember that this is a space for honest conversations about our lives, the thoughts we carry, the emotions we manage, and the pressure we often do not like to talk about. Each episode is a pause, a chance to slow down, reflect, and gently explore what's happening beneath the surface of everyday Nigerian life. Now, remember, this isn't advice, this isn't diagnosis, and it isn't about having everything figured out. It's about awareness, it's about giving context, and it's about making space for what we feel. So, if you have lived in Nigeria, especially Lagos, you know that the pace here is very different. It doesn't stop, traffic doesn't stop, hustle doesn't stop, the noise, the pressure, the demands, they never stop. And we've slowly turned it into an identity. We say things like, Lagos has made me strong, no grief for anybody, I'm going to pass through Lagos. Lagos is not going to pass through me. I can survive anything. If I can survive in Lagos, I can survive anywhere. There is genuine resilience in living in Lagos or in living in Nigeria, and I have a very deep respect for it. But here is the distinction we almost never make. Resilience is not the same as being okay. Resilience is not the same as being okay. You can be strong and still suffering. You can be achieving and still be falling apart on the inside. You can be functioning and still running on fumes. Nigeria doesn't make a lot of space for that, because in this culture, you just push through. You just keep going. Stopping is for people who do not have bills to pay. Stopping is for people who do not have family members depending on them. So we don't stop. And eventually we now start to wonder why we're empty. So from a public health standpoint, and this is my very professional brain now speaking, chronic stress without adequate recovery is not just tiredness. It's a physiological reality. It changes your hormonal levels, changes your cortisol levels, it disrupts your sleep, it affects your immune system, it affects your cardiovascular health, it affects your cognitive performance. So having emotional exhaustion is not just you being tired. It is a biological response to a system running without enough rest. But over here, we've never really framed it that way. Sometimes we frame it as laziness, as ingratitude, as weakness sometimes, and because of that it stays invisible. And because it's invincible, or because we've shoved it down, it just deepens. So let me describe what emotional exhaustion actually looks like, in case you were wondering, because sometimes we confuse it with regular tiredness or regular stress, and then we miss it. So here's what emotional exhaustion looks like. You feel detached. You're in the room, but you're not really present. You're in the conversation, but you're already gone. Your mind is everywhere. You're irritable over small things. The smallest inconvenience can set you off. Something that on a normal day wouldn't even be a bother, wouldn't even register. You used to care about your work, you used to care about your goals, you used to care about people around you, but now it just feels pointless. You just keep asking yourself, what is even the point? What am I even doing here? And most times you feel like you have nothing left to give, especially for those in people facing work like healthcare, education, customer service, sometimes leadership. So you spend so much time pouring into others, spending so much time doing work that you turn around and your cup is empty. And then you feel guilty about being empty, and that guilt drains you further. And now your body has started to talk. You have headaches, there's fatigue, you have tight chest, you're beginning to have stomach issues. Your body is literally flagging something your mind is refusing to acknowledge. Things that used to bring you joy have stopped working. So like hobbies, friends, even good food. Good food is not working again. You just feel low and you just feel flat. And in the Nigerian context, there are layers upon layers upon layers on top of this. So you're not just managing your own exhaustion, you're probably the breadwinner, you're probably someone's financial support, you're someone's emotional anchor, you're managing your ambitions, you're managing family expectations, cultural obligations. This auntie is calling you, this uncle is calling you, you have siblings, you have community commitments, and the very practical reality that everyday logistics, just come with, which is the full-time job, right? There's no lights, there's no water, there's traffic, there's no network, because MTN has decided to be, if they want to, they can just go and start selling akara somewhere. But you have to deal with all of that. And the baseline cost of existing in this environment, in this country, is already very high. So we're all tired at a structural level, at the base level. Everybody is tired, and then when people crack, or when we crack, we're now suddenly surprised. What happened? How did we get here? Now, I've told you the problem. There are some things that you're probably doing that are coping mechanisms, but aren't really coping. It's not working. It's not working. So things like burying yourself in more work because, productivity feels like proof that you're doing okay. If I'm making money, it can't be that bad. If I'm achieving something, it can't be that bad. And you over hustle. But business is one of the most effective anesthetics available, and one of the most destructive. So we normalize it. You tell yourself things like, everybody's going through it. This is Lagos life. At least I have a job. And we compare our pain downward until we convince ourselves that we have no right to feel the way we feel. And then we begin to isolate. We begin to pull back from people in a culture that's almost always celebrates strength. Being vulnerable can now feel like losing, and sometimes we explode. And that's when you know that this is the end. I've gotten to the last bit of my strength, and all that unprocessed exhaustion eventually comes out sideways, comes out where there are little gaps, little holes. So it comes out on the people that are closest to us. It comes out in decisions that we will not make on a full tank of strength, and then we will now later regret. And the issue is that none of these really address the root of the problem. They're just survival mechanisms, and it makes sense why we reach for them, but they just keep us running on an empty tank longer than we're ever meant to. Now, what do we do? You're probably asking yourself, okay, I see the problem. What do I do? Where do we go from here? The first thing you need to do is to name it accurately. Stop calling it stress when what you mean is that you are emotionally depleted. The language matters. When you accurately name your experience, you stop gaslighting yourself and you create the conditions necessary to actually address the problem, right? 2, protect a small pocket of stillness every day. I'm not saying a full retreat. I'm not saying a vacation because, you probably do need a vacation. But even if it's 10 to 15 minutes where you are not consuming anything, you're not consuming any work, any content, you're not producing anything, you're not performing, you're just being, or in Nigerian language, you just day. right? So this is not laziness. It's more like maintenance. It's like servicing, right? You won't go and run a gen and allow the gen to be running without refueling, without servicing it. And so you need to protect a small pocket of stillness where you can just be. Another thing you can do is you need to audit. You need to audit where the problem is. Sometimes we talk about emotional exhaustion as something that happens to us. Sometimes we're the cause of our problem. We're the source. You're a perfectionist. You're always overcommitting. You're always saying yes when everything in you is saying no. You don't build boundaries. You just continue giving and giving and giving and giving even when you are running low. So that's the third that's the third thing you need to sit down and do. Maybe in the 10 to 15 minutes. Just think, just reflect. The fourth thing you need to do is to find a safe person. Not social media, not an audience, just one person who can hold you without an agenda. A friend, a mentor, a counselor, your therapist, which, by the way, we do. So, yeah, we can offer that service, right? But you need to understand that isolation accelerates depletion. You need to understand that we are social beings and connection is a genuine resource. It doesn't mean you're not independent, because to be honest, I don't know where has your independence taken you to, apart from being exhausted emotionally, right? And then the next one is take your body seriously. Take your body seriously. I've been shouting for years about this. Take your body seriously. Sleep well, drink water, move around, eat good food. These are not optional things for only people who have time. There are things that will help your mental and emotional health. And in a country where we've been taught to override our bodies because of productivity, this is something you need to be very intentional about. And you need to know that recovery is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's just letting yourself know when to stop, giving yourself permission to stop, permission to be human, to not be okay for a moment. Now, before I go, I need to say that emotional exhaustion in Nigeria is not just a personal problem, it's a collective one. When a society runs its people to exhaustion and celebrates it as a virtue, it is literally extracting from a generation without replenishing. We see the cost everywhere. We see the problems everywhere. There is problem in Nigeria, whether we like to admit it or not. There is burnout. Everybody is burnt out. A growing number of people just want to leave the country, whether they want to or not. They just assume that, they just believe that it's better everywhere else but here. And because this quiet suffering doesn't get named, we are never taught how to deal with it. And this is a very, very serious issue. And it starts with each of us deciding within our own lives, our own homes, our own workplaces, our own schedules, that we will stop rewarding exhaustion, that we will learn to ask people how they are doing and wait for an answer. So you're being there for people, but you're also being there for yourself. If this landed well for you, share it with someone that needs to hear it. You don't even need to give them context, just send it to them. By the time they get to this point, they'll know why you sent it to them. Also, you should come find us on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for spending these few minutes with me. If this episode resonated, don't forget to take a moment first to sit with it. If you need to come back to it, that's fine. You don't need to rush the process. Don't forget to follow this podcast for more conversations like this. And if you'd like additional support, don't forget to reach out to Nura Services. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.